It's strange how sometimes the best moments of your life come at the worst possible time. That's what this whole trip turned out to be for me. A beautiful mistake. A quiet explosion. A week that felt like forever and ended way too soon. It started with my mom's idea of a reset. She booked us a week in this quiet little beach town on the Oregon coast. Like changing zip codes would somehow fix everything going wrong at home. We'd been stretched thin for months. Money, my dad's job stress, my own tension from taking a gap year that nobody seemed to understand. I didn't even want to go. I figured it would just be 7 days of foggy beaches, awkward family dinners, and trying to ignore whatever passive-aggressive argument my parents were brewing next. But then I met Eli, and everything shifted. The first time I saw him, he was sitting on the edge of a picnic table by the boardwalk, headphones in, nodding along to something only he could hear. I was walking back from the little diner my mom insisted I grab breakfast from, overpriced coffee and a bagel in hand, sleep still in my eyes. And there he was. He looked up, like he felt me staring. We held eye contact for maybe 2 seconds, just enough for something to jolt through me, fast and electric. I didn't even smile. I just kept walking, head down, trying not to think about it, trying not to admit that I wanted to see him again. I had no idea who he was, whether he was local or just another vacation kid like me. But the next day, he was back. Same table, same headphones. This time, I sat down at the one next to him. That was how it started. His name was Eli. He was 19, just like me. From a suburb outside of Denver, here with his parents, for a family escape. He said it like a joke, but the way his eyes flicked toward the ground when he said it made me think maybe we were escaping the same things. We talked for hours that first real conversation. About music. About the weird dreams we had. About how both of us were stuck in this in-between part of life, where high school was over, but nothing else had really begun yet. He laughed with his whole chest. His hands moved a lot when he spoke, and every time he smiled, I felt like I was being pulled deeper into something I wasn't prepared for. Over the next few days, we were inseparable. We met at the beach in the mornings, wandered around the town during the afternoons, snuck out to walk the shoreline at night. It didn't feel like a vacation anymore. It felt like something I'd accidentally been waiting my whole life for. And somewhere between day 3 and day 5, it hit me. I was falling for him. Hard. I didn't want to say it out loud. Didn't even let myself think the word love. But there was something in the way Eli would look at me that made everything else fade out. We never talked about what this was. We didn't have to. It was in the way he brushed sand off my shoulder without asking. In the way he'd stop mid-sentence, just to look at me and smile like I was something rare. In the way our legs would barely touch while we sat side by side, but neither of us moved away. On the 6th night, after another late walk down the beach, we ended up sitting on the rocks at the edge of the bluff. The tide was loud, the moon bright and full. He pulled his hoodie tighter and looked out over the waves. "I wish this wasn't ending," he said. I didn't respond at first. I was too scared to say what I really felt. That this week had been the best I'd felt in a long time. That he made something inside me feel possible again. "Me too," I finally said. "Feels like we just got started." He turned to me then, his face soft in the pale moonlight. "What happens when we leave?" I felt that question settle deep in my chest. He lived halfway across the country. I was in Seattle. Neither of us had a car. We both lived with parents who didn't exactly give us total freedom. And as it turned out, his family was flying out the next morning, 24 hours before we were. "I don't know," I said, because it was the truth. I wanted to say, "We'll figure it out." I wanted to be that guy who promised something bold, like hopping a bus or saving up for a plane ticket. But I also knew what it was like to watch promises fade the second you're back to reality. Eli leaned in. "Can I kiss you?" I didn't answer, I just moved closer. The kiss was slow, nervous, perfect, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the goodbye, not the distance, not the uncertainty. Just him. Just us. We didn't rush anything after that. We just sat there, legs dangling over the edge, our shoulders pressed together, in the kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. I didn't want to go back to the rental house. He didn't want to go back to his hotel. but we knew the night wouldn't last forever. Eventually, he looked down at his watch and sighed. My parents are probably wondering where I am. Same, I muttered, but I didn't move. He turned toward me like he was trying to memorize the way I looked under that pale moonlight. I don't want to do that thing where we say we'll stay in touch and then slowly stop talking. Yeah. I felt the ache already forming in my chest. Me neither. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie, pulled out his phone. Can I get your number anyway? I nodded. We exchanged numbers like it meant something permanent, even if both of us knew the odds. Different time zones, school starting soon, lives too separate. But I wanted to believe. Before we stood, he grabbed my hand, not in a rushed way, not like he was trying to sneak something before it was too late. Just holding it. It felt right. We walked back through the sand in silence, and when we reached the path that split toward our separate places, he stopped again. This week, he started, then shook his head like the words didn't fit. You made it feel okay to be myself. I blinked fast, that lump catching in my throat. You too. He looked like he wanted to say more, like maybe there was something else sitting right on the edge of his lips. But he didn't. We hugged. Long. Tight. His face buried into my shoulder like he didn't want to let go, and then he turned around and left. Just like that. I stood there for a while, watching the shadow of him disappear down the boardwalk. The beach was empty now. Quiet again. Just me and the sound of the ocean. I didn't cry. Not then. But when I got back to my room, I stared at the ceiling and felt that hollow space in my chest grow. This wasn't just a summer fling. It felt like the beginning of something that couldn't begin. The next morning was gray and foggy, like the weather understood what kind of day it was. I woke up early. Earlier than I wanted to, because my brain wouldn't let me rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Eli's face, his smile. The way his fingers lingered on mine when he let go. The way he didn't say goodbye. Not really. Just turned and left like maybe that would make it easier. It didn't. I checked my phone. Nothing from him yet. Just the usual spam emails and a missed message from my mom asking if I wanted to grab coffee before we hit the road. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, staring out the window. The rental house backed up to the same boardwalk where I'd first seen him. I half hoped I'd catch a glimpse of him again, like maybe he'd come back for one last look. But the benches were empty. The path was still. I finally replied to my mom, told her I'd meet her in town. As I walked past the spot where we always met, the picnic table where I'd first sat down beside him, it hit me like a gut punch. How easily something becomes sacred. How a random piece of weather-worn wood can turn into a landmark just because of who you sat next to on it. He wasn't there, of course he wasn't. His flight was probably already boarding. I got my coffee, barely tasted it, and sat near the front of the cafe, facing the boardwalk like I was watching for someone I knew wouldn't come. My phone buzzed. Eli. Hey, made it to the airport. Just wanted to say thanks for everything. I stared at the message for a long time. I knew what he meant. Thanks for everything was a stand-in for the 1,000 things we didn't know how to say, for the feelings that didn't fit in a text box, for the week that shifted something in both of us. I typed out a dozen replies before I settled on one that didn't feel too much or too little. Me. You made this week make sense. I'll never forget it. He read it right away, but he didn't respond. A few hours later, we packed the car and started the long drive back to Seattle. The coast faded behind us. Trees. Towns. Then highways, all of it blurring into the kind of quiet that only road trips can hold. I kept replaying things in my head. Every moment, every glance, every time our shoulders brushed, I kept thinking of ways I could have asked for more. An actual goodbye. A plan. A next step. But I didn't. Neither of us did. And maybe that was the most painful part. That we loved each other. Because I knew now that it was love. Even if it had only been a week. But we didn't say it out loud. We just carried it. Quietly. Separately. Because the truth is, We didn't live the kind of lives that let this happen easily. His parents didn't know. Mine would have had questions I wasn't ready to answer. Neither of us were out. Not really. And not enough to fight the distance and reality of going back to the lives we'd put on pause for 7 days. It wasn't just fear. It was logistics, timing, life. Sometimes love isn't enough. And sometimes that's the worst part of all. Coming home felt like walking into a version of my life I didn't belong to anymore. Everything was technically the same. My room hadn't changed. The streets outside looked exactly like they always did. Overcast, quiet, familiar in a way that should have felt comforting. But instead, it felt dull, dimmed, like I'd left the color behind on the coast with Eli. The hardest part wasn't the silence. It was how loud my memories were. I'd go to brush my teeth and remember him leaning in too close, laughing with mint on his breath. I'd sit on the porch and think about how his hand barely touched mine under the stars. At night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was doing the same. Wondering if his chest ached the way mine did. I didn't text him. Not for 3 days. I told myself to be patient. Maybe he was processing. Maybe he didn't feel it the way I did. And maybe that was okay. But every time I looked at my phone, every time it buzzed, I felt my stomach drop when it wasn't him. Then one night, well past midnight, it lit up. Eli. Can't sleep. I keep thinking about you. I swear my whole body froze. I read it 3 times before I even thought about responding. Just seeing his name again did something to me. Like I could breathe a little deeper. Like maybe I hadn't imagined all of it. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I wanted to say something cool, something casual, but all that came out was the truth. Me. Same. Everything feels off without you. A minute passed, then another. Then the little typing bubble appeared, disappeared, came back. Eli. It's like I finally found someone who got me. And now I'm supposed to just, what? Pretend it didn't happen? Go back to normal? That hit me so hard I had to sit up. I typed slowly, deliberately. Me. I don't think I can go back to normal. And it was like something cracked open after that. For the next 2 hours, we messaged non-stop. Not flirty, not sexy, just real. Like we were finally admitting all the things we'd been holding back. He told me he hadn't stopped thinking about that last night. How he kept replaying the moment our lips met. How soft it was, how right it felt. He said he missed the way I made him laugh when he didn't even want to smile. Missed the way it felt easy with me, like we'd known each other longer than a week. Then he said something that stopped me cold. Eli. I didn't even know I was into guys like that, not until you. I sat there staring at that message for a long time. Because it was my story too. I mean, I'd wondered before, I'd had thoughts, glances, but I'd never felt anything the way I felt with him. Never had someone look at me like that. Never had someone hold my hand like it meant something. I typed, me. Same. You're the first person who made it make sense. Like maybe I don't have to be afraid of what I want. We talked until 3 a.m. We didn't talk about what came next. Not yet. It was like we both knew we were in a bubble, and if we talked too much about the outside world, it would burst. But the next day, we did. We had to. It started with a simple question. Eli, do you think we could actually do this? Like long distance? I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes more than anything. But I couldn't lie to him, or to myself. Me? I think we'd end up hurting more than helping each other. We can't even see each other. Not with our parents, not with everything else. There was a long pause. It felt like hours before he replied, Eli. Yeah, that's what I figured too. I just needed to hear it. My chest felt tight, like something important was slipping through my fingers. We didn't say it outright, but we both knew this was it. Not because we didn't care, not because we didn't want to try, but because trying meant pretending we were ready for something we weren't equipped to handle. He was still figuring himself out. So was I, and the world wasn't exactly making it easy. But before we stopped texting, he sent one last message. Eli, you were my first real something. I'll never forget that. I stared at that for a long time. Then I whispered the words out loud to no one. Me too. A week passed. Then another. And the messages slowed. Not in a dramatic way. Not all at once. Just gradually. A missed day here. A delayed reply there. The kind of silence that builds slowly until it becomes the new normal. I hated it. But I understood it too. It's hard to hold on to someone who was only ever half real in your world. Eli didn't exist in my school or at my work or in my family's orbit. He lived in a memory, in a week that felt like fiction. And now, with no new moments to build on, we were both quietly sinking into the past. I'd still check his social sometimes. He didn't post much, just the occasional story of a hike or some playlist he was into. But every time I saw his face, that same ache would come back, like a phantom limb I didn't know how to live without yet. One night, a full month after we said goodbye, I got another message. Eli, heard this song today and it made me think of you. He sent a link to some low-key indie track. Soft vocals, gentle guitar, the kind of music that sounds like a rainy afternoon. I didn't recognize the artist, but the lyrics were about fleeting things, about moments that pass too quickly and leave you changed. I listened to it 3 times before replying. Me. Yeah, that feels like us. We didn't say much else that night, just a few lines back and forth. But I fell asleep with my phone on my chest, heart full and aching all at once. And that's how it went for a while. We'd check in here and there. A message every few weeks. A song. A meme. A picture of the ocean. Enough to say I remember you. Enough to say you mattered. But never enough to feel close again. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want more. That I didn't fantasize sometimes about seeing him again, accidentally running into him at a random airport, or getting a message saying he was in town. I played those daydreams like a movie in my head, but real life doesn't work like that. We were 2 kids who met on vacation, 19 and unsure of everything. And for 7 days, we lived in a perfect pocket of time where nothing else existed but each other. It wasn't supposed to last. That didn't make it hurt less. Fall came quickly, the kind of weather shift that changes everything, leaves crisping at the edges, air going sharp, sky turning that steel blue that looks endless and empty all at once. I tried to throw myself into a routine again. Classes, part-time job, weekend dinners with my parents where I nodded along and pretended to be present. But it felt like I was wearing clothes that didn't fit anymore. Everything looked the same, but nothing sat right. Eli and I didn't talk much anymore. Maybe once a month. Just enough to prove we hadn't forgotten each other. A birthday message. A funny video. A quick, hey, hope you're good. But it wasn't the same. We'd become something else, something quieter, and somehow more permanent in its silence. There was no big falling out. No final argument. Just space. Just life moving forward in different directions. It should have been easier than it was. Because on paper, it was a vacation romance. A week-long blur. The kind of thing people laugh about years later. Remember that boy from the beach? Like a postcard you stick in a drawer and forget. But he wasn't forgettable. He was the first person I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to. With Eli, there wasn't a performance. There wasn't pressure. There was just me and him, and something soft and real sitting between us that neither of us had words for. Even now, I catch myself remembering the way his hand fit into mine, the way he'd bite the inside of his cheek when he was trying not to smile, the way he looked at me like he was seeing something he'd been searching for. And yeah, maybe that's the hardest part, knowing we had that, and still had to let it go. One Saturday afternoon in late October, I found myself back at the coast. Not the same beach. Somewhere a few hours south. I was with a couple friends, pretending I wanted the fresh air, pretending it was just a spontaneous road trip. But part of me had to admit I was hoping, stupidly, that maybe fate worked like that. That maybe I'd turn a corner and he'd be there again. Hoodie pulled up, headphones in, waiting on a bench like nothing had changed. He wasn't, of course. But the wind still smelled like salt and pine. The ocean still moved like it did when we were lying under the stars. The cold still made me think of how close he pulled me that night when the fog rolled in. I wandered down to the water alone while my friends climbed the rocks. There, with my shoes in one hand and the freezing surf curling around my toes, I finally let myself say it, out loud, to no one. I loved you. The wind caught it and pulled it away before it could even land. It wasn't about getting closure. It wasn't about trying to make it last. It was just about acknowledging that it happened. That for 1 week, something rare and real bloomed between two boys who hadn't expected to find each other. And maybe that was enough. When I walked back up the beach, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Eli. Eli, saw the ocean today. Thought of you. Hope you're doing okay. I smiled, quietly. The ache was still there, but it had softened. It didn't burn anymore. It just hummed, like a scar you don't notice until it rains. Me. Same here. I was just there, actually. It's still beautiful. 3 dots. Then, Eli? So were we. I didn't reply right away. I read it. I let it sink in. Then I slipped my phone back into my pocket and turned to catch up with my friends. Because maybe love isn't always meant to stay. Sometimes it's just meant to show you what's possible, what your heart is capable of. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it gives you a story you'll carry with you forever. That was Eli. Not a regret, just a beginning that didn't need an ending.